Welcome to You Are Not a Goat. If you want to follow your passion and do what you love, this is the podcast for you. Without further ado, here's your host, Shlomi Zayats.
Hello, welcome to another episode of You Are Not a Goat. My name is Shlomi Zayats and I'm your host. Welcome back to the show. This week we have a very important episode. I'm actually going to call it an emergency episode. Not that this episode was recorded in an emergency, but I feel like people should listen to it like it's an emergency. Listen to the episode as soon as you can. Very important episode to listen to. And let me tell you why. 2 days ago, there was a horrific shooting in Jersey City, New Jersey, where multiple Jewish people were killed just for the fact that they were Jewish by terrorists. And now there's a lot of talk about Jewish people protecting their communities, defending themselves, possibly with guns. So I bring you this week a man named Yonatan Stern. He is a former IDF, Israeli Army sharpshooter, and he has started a Israeli-style training school in the United States for people, Jewish people technically, mostly Jewish people, who come to learn how to use and operate firearms safely with Israeli tactical training. Now, it's important to note that very often in the aftermath of shootings, the media talks about, it's time to just grieve, time for silence, time to remember. It's not a time to politicize things. Many people don't like to get into the conversation of guns, no guns, right? In the few days after shooting, people just want to process what happened. So therefore, I'd like to say, this may be a little bit of a controversial interview. That's fine. I allow everybody to speak on my program, and we're just trying to bring ideas out there. If you feel one way or another way, you're entitled to your opinion, and so is the guest on my program. Another thing to note is that because, as I mentioned, it's a bit of a political issue right now in the aftermath of the shooting, I've actually known Yonatan Stern for a year and a half now, and we've been planning to do this interview for a couple of weeks. We actually settled on today. A couple of weeks ago, we decided that we're going to do it today. And it just so happens to be that today is 2 days after the shooting. So this is not coming from a place of trying to be political or trying to push an agenda. This interview was scheduled to be this week's podcast, and it just so happens to be there was a shooting, unfortunately. Therefore, perhaps it's very appropriate to have this interview this week. So without further ado, I present to you Yonatan Stern, founder and owner of Cherev Gidon, which is the U.S.-Israeli Tactical Training Academy. Hey Yonatan, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming on. So for those of the listeners who do not know this, I met Yonatan a little over a year ago when he graciously invited me to attend one of his seminars. Can we call it a seminar, or is it a...
Seminar is a good word for it. Training course, either or.
Right, okay. So this took place in Pennsylvania. Very interesting, very informative. I walked in knowing almost nothing about guns or self-protection, and I walked out knowing certainly a ton more than I knew before. So Yonatan, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got involved in this?
Sure. So I'm the director of Cherev Gidon Israeli Tactical Training Academy in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. And what we do at Cherev Gidon is we provide Israeli combat shooting skills to American civilians, specifically to American Jews. And the goal is to get those communities prepared and ready and able to defend themselves against the very intense anti-Semitic violent threats that are facing Jews in America today. And how I got into it, well, it's very interesting, really. I grew up in Kiryat Arba, which is next to Hebron, Al-Halil, as they say in Arabic. And
so for those who don't know, that's in Israel?
Yep, that's in Israel. It's the second most important city to Jews in the world, Hebron, the holy city, where the patriarchs Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob are buried. Well, not Jacob, not Joseph, I'm sorry. Joseph is not buried there, but all the other patriarchs are buried there,
Right.
and most of the matriarchs except for Rachel as well. And anyhow, I grew up there. I served in the IDF during the Second Intifada. I was in the Israeli police as well as a volunteer, and had a lot of experience, unfortunately, for whatever, for better or for worse, but unfortunately in combat and the issue of firearms use. And after the military, I went to yeshiva, and then I went to the IDC Herzliya to study counterterrorism. And that really became sort of my field, my focus, if you will. And I moved to America in 2007, and I saw really the need for Israeli defensive firearms training skills in America, even at that time, because I saw the threats to Jews, the violence, anti-Semitism, which was boiling up at the time, but didn't actually spill out yet the way we see it happening today. And I realize that there is certainly a demand for this, and there's a need to provide these types of skills that we have as Israeli soldiers, as Israeli veterans, to the American Jewish population, because they so desperately need these things. And also that there is a Second Amendment in America. There's a lot of guns here, but unfortunately there's also not a lot of training, which is not a very good combination, because when you have people who are armed and don't really know how to use those weapons safely, that leads, unfortunately, to a lot of accidental shootings and injuries and deaths.
Right.
And what we have in Israel, we have a lot of professionalism. There's not a lot of private gun ownership, but there is a lot of highly skilled professionals who are very well trained in firearms, and the rate of accidents there is very, very low because of that. So I realized that if we take that Israeli knowledge, the know-how, and bring it to the American public here, where we have a Second Amendment, we're going to be able to create a wonderful combination where Jews will be able to learn to protect themselves and have the weapons with which to defend themselves, and we're going to be able to secure those communities for the time that I foresaw was going to occur, like we're seeing now, where you have this wave of terrible, violent anti-Semitism where Jews are being shot right and left. And so that's kind of how it came together, and I put together my training facility, got all the kinds of weapons that we use in Israel, the same types of firearms that we use, because we have the tactics and we had to have the weapons and the gear, and I got the instructors. I hired instructors who are also ex-IDF veterans just like me, and started training people. And it started off well, but it became really, really big and really successful, unfortunately, I have to say, after Pittsburgh. That's when people started to realize that, shooting guns is not just a sport. It's not just something you do for fun, but it's something which is necessary to save your life and keep you and your family and your community safe. And it's only been getting more and more busy since then, and there's been more and more demand. And, right now, for better or for worse, again, Harav Gidon is a very popular place for people to come and train. And again, not because they just want to have fun shooting guns, but because Jews in America today are starting to realize that we have no choice but to get armed and train to defend ourselves.
Right. Now, it's interesting. Actually, when we met last year, it was October 14th of 2018. So I attended one of your training courses, and I had been telling people legitimately for years that I think Jews, specifically Orthodox Jews, are a little bit, can we say, maybe unprepared. Like they haven't been taking these threats as seriously as they should have. Unfortunately, many of our institutions, and I don't want to go too much into detail, are not very secure. And this is a big problem. So I've been talking about this for a long time. I found out about you, reached out to you, you invited me to the course. Exactly 1 week later, we had the Tree of Life shooting in Pittsburgh. 6 months later to the day, there was the shooting at Chabad of Poway in California. And now about 8 months later, we have just 2 days, yesterday or 2 days ago, there was the unfortunate shooting in Jersey City where a bunch of Orthodox Jews were targeted. Thank God there could have been a lot worse because according to the law enforcement right now, the shooters had plans to attack a school next door to the grocery that they attacked. But we did lose a couple of our community members, and that's a very sad thing. So How did you foresee this? What did you feel in the air when you started this, how many years ago?
Well, I saw, first of all, a buildup of rhetoric in Jew hatred, which we hadn't seen in America or in the world in general for a very long time. We had a nice long run since World War II, really, where open anti-Semitism just wasn't cool. But the Holocaust has been pretty much forgotten, unfortunately, by many people, and that's no longer true. And I saw, the violent hatred boiling up from a lot of different directions, online, on the internet, and in a lot of places. And I also saw how, as you mentioned, how grossly unprepared so many Jewish communities in America were and still are. And I, as a security professional, I'm constantly looking for vulnerabilities. I'm always thinking, I say, if you want to beat your enemy, if you want to understand your enemy, you have to think like your enemy. So I'm always trying to think, if I was somebody that wanted to target a Jewish community, how would I do it? And I see the synagogues and I see how vulnerable they are, and the Jewish communities in general, and the unimaginable lack of security, which I'm not going to go into too much detail for obvious reasons. But I saw that this is going to lead to a terrible combination here. The hatred which is building up among so many sectors within the American population, combined with the complete lack of preparedness of the communities, is a really terrible combination. And also just this lackadaisical attitude among the Jewish community, because things have been so good in America for so long that people just can't stomach the idea that they could be any other way. And so it seemed obvious to me that things were going to start to change. I didn't know exactly when, I didn't know exactly where, but I knew that at some point they would change, and as we can see now, they have.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. But I imagine this string of shootings that has been happening is bringing you a lot of business. Who are your customers, and what are they coming to learn? Are they already gun owners, or have they not yet tried firearms? Tell me a little bit about that, please.
Right, so that's a great question. So, as you saw a little bit when you came for your course, it's mostly Jews from the greater New York area, from the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and Pennsylvania as well. I would say the majority of them are not yet gun owners. Maybe 25% to 30% are. Okay. But most of them are not, but they want it for a long time. They've wanted to. When I say a long time, I mean maybe since Pittsburgh. A few of them since before that, but mostly since Pittsburgh. And they've wanted to get into, get their carry permit, carry a firearm to synagogue and wherever else they go, and be able to protect their community, their families. And they want to learn. They want to, get the skills to be able to do that effectively. And they come from a variety of backgrounds. We have a lot of people who are modern Orthodox from Teaneck, New Jersey, or the Five Towns, or Riverdale. And then we have a lot of Haredi Jews as well, who come from Brooklyn, Borough Park, from Flatbush, from Muncie, Rockland County, the general area. And there's also some non-Jews who come as well, who are interested in Israeli tactical skills, which are recognized as among the best in the world for defensive purposes. Right. But what everybody has in common is they all want to learn how to defend themselves with firearms, because at the end of the day, it's our right as Americans. We have a Second Amendment. We have the right to bear arms and to defend ourselves. And they all see the writing on the wall that America is becoming a more and more dangerous place, and we have to be able to defend ourselves. And that's their goal.
Okay, so I want to talk to you a little bit about the Second Amendment, because here are my thoughts on this. Second Amendment is a very controversial issue right now, a very hot topic. Every time there's a shooting, the media goes nuts. Right. But the Second Amendment, my understanding of it, was created by the Founding Fathers so that there could never be a time when a government went rogue and tyranny reigned. So if the government goes bad, it's no longer doing the will of the people. What the Founding Fathers had in mind is that the republic, the people, should rise up with arms, get rid of the government, and start again. It's a great concept. Thank God it hasn't happened yet. It's happened in other countries where governments have gone rogue, and many times, unfortunately, the citizens have no way to defend themselves. Right. My question to you is, one of the side effects of having a Second Amendment, where basically every single citizen is guaranteed a right to own a gun, unless they're a convicted felon or something like that, that one of the side effects is that there are hundreds of millions of guns in the country, on the streets, and we do see a larger, higher number, I believe, of gun violence in the United States than in other places. Many people would say that's a small price to pay compared to tyranny, but what do you think?
Well, I would agree with that sentiment. I mean, if we look at what happened, let's say, for example, in Venezuela, where you have an out-of-control, tyrannical, dictatorial socialist regime, which is basically holding onto control by force and through illegal means, and is usurping the rights of the people and taking over against the rule of law, and the people have been disarmed and they have no way to resist. And you know, you have mass starvation and the entire country has collapsed. I mean, if you look at that example, that's what hypothetically could be in America if we didn't have the Second Amendment. Would we prefer to live in a place like that where millions of people are fleeing as refugees? You know, or
and
look
people
what's happening.
People are getting killed by the government, and people are also dying of starvation.
All together, yeah. And that very often happens in tyrannical regimes. You know, the combination, total economic collapse, and also you know, no personal freedom, and people being rounded up and jailed and put into concentration camps, work camps, gulags. I mean,
I don't know if that's happening in Venezuela, but there are other countries like that.
Well, I don't know about gulags, but I mean, there's certainly tremendous repression, and people are dying of preventable diseases because they don't have medications. There's people that are starving, children that are malnourished. I mean, the poverty is out of control. It's an insane situation, and the people can't resist because they don't have the right to bear arms. If they had the right to bear arms, if it was a well-armed population like we are here in America, they could resist and overthrow the government. And so, yeah, like you said, we haven't had a situation like that occur here in America yet, thank God. But there's no saying that hypothetically at some time in the future it couldn't. If you look at some of these radical movements that exist in America today, such as Antifa and Black Lives Matter, I mean, it's entirely possible that these people might try to do a takeover of the government, either by election or by anti-democratic violent means. And if something like that would happen, that's where we'd need the Second Amendment to keep our republic free and keep ourselves free from this kind of tyrannical rule that we have seen time and time again in other countries. And we don't want to be like a Hong Kong here, where you have a communist regime which is trying to take away our rights and limit our freedoms and walk all over us. And so, yes, there is a certain price to pay for freedom. And I think we can do better. I think that there's a lot of people that really shouldn't have guns. And I think that there needs to be more training. I think people need to be more responsible. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are not trained that have guns and they misuse them. But at the end of the day, we're much better off here with the Second Amendment than anywhere else in the world without it. Because when people want to do violence, they're going to do violence one way or the other. If you look at Britain, for example, there's all the time terror attacks there and violence and you know, mayhem, and it's not committed really with guns because, as you mentioned, you know, there's a lot less guns than they are here. But at the end of the day, who cares if people are getting killed by bombings or stabbings or car ramming attacks? If people want to do harm to others, they're going to do it. But having the Second Amendment empowers the weak, empowers the good guys to stand up against the bad guys. And that's why it's so important, especially for us as Jews, with our experience being a historically persecuted minority in all the diasporas where we've been, whether that's Spain, whether it's Poland, Russia, Germany, you know, you name it. We should know more than anyone else how important it is for our own protection to be able to defend ourselves. So the Second Amendment is something which we can never give up on. We can never compromise on.
Okay. So now that you said that, I want to ask you this. As you know, there are between 5 and 6 million Jews in the United States, and right. A large number of them, specifically Orthodox Jews, but even non-Orthodox, all kind of Jews, find themselves living in states like New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, where in many of these places, for example, New York City, it's almost impossible to own any kind of firearm. New Jersey, it's impossible to carry a firearm. But New York State does allow it for people who live upstate. I believe Connecticut is pretty hard too. What's the solution for these people? Like, how do you protect your synagogue without having to hire armed security? If you want to just use your Second Amendment right, what do you do if you live in one of these states?
Well, the answer very simply is to leave. A lot of people, when I say that, react with, well, we have a good job here, my kids are in school, we have a nice house. Mm-hmm. And my answer to them is very simple. What could be more important than your personal safety? What could be more important than your family's safety? Because these Jews that were killed yesterday in that supermarket in New Jersey, they're dead now. Had they moved a year ago or even a month ago to another state where they could have had a firearm, they'd be alive. And even if that meant giving up a good job and taking a job that maybe wasn't exactly what they wanted, or moving their kids from the perfect school to another school that's not exactly what they wanted, or selling your house and buying another house somewhere else, I know it's hard to move. I know it's not easy to relocate yourself and your family, but at the end of the day, there is no price that you can possibly put on freedom and on safety. And your family's safety and your community's safety, that's paramount. That's above all else. So the answer is very simple. These people shouldn't live in those places. If you live in a place like New York City or New Jersey where the government, these radical left-wing governments there, which don't believe in personal freedom, deny you the ability to protect yourself as a Jew, even though these criminals, these terrorists are heavily armed because they don't care about the laws and they're going to have assault rifles and they're going to have explosives, you're at a disadvantage there if you're obeying the law. And to break the law is not going to help because you're just going to end up in jail. So the only option is to move. There are so many places in this country where we have, the true interpretation of the Second Amendment, where the average citizen can own a firearm, carry a firearm, and it's actually only a tiny amount of places where you can't. So these people should start looking for places to relocate to. There's a lot of states. If they want to stay close to these places, New York, New Jersey, they can look into Pennsylvania, where we're located. It's a great state. It's right next door. And there's a large Jewish community in a lot of places in Philadelphia, in Scranton, in Pittsburgh. And there's good schools, there's good jobs, better quality of living, the cost of living is cheaper. And they should start moving as soon as possible. Don't wait. They should just start packing up immediately. Realize that this is a matter of as we say, pikuach nefesh, of saving lives. And not think about what the costs are going to be, because at the end of the day, the benefits you'll reap will be so much more.
Right now, have you seen the video of the shooting from Jersey City?
I've seen videos of the police moving in formation after the fact and hearing gunshots in the background, but I haven't seen any specific video of the actual shooting itself.
Okay, because there's a video that was released a couple hours ago. It looks like it was from one of the cameras on the street, and it shows a van pulling up in front of the supermarket and the shooters running in. It happened very quickly. You mentioned earlier that if those people had guns, they would still be alive. Do you think that's fair to say, or perhaps they could have been alive? Because it happens very, very quickly. It's not always a possibility to save the day. As you know, in Texas a couple of months ago, there was a shooting in a Walmart. Texas is a good state for the Second Amendment, but unfortunately nobody stopped the shooter, and he was able to kill like 20 people.
Right, so that's a great point you make. What I want to emphasize is the fact that you live in a free state doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to choose to express the rights that you have. It's just like a lot of us, we have the right to free speech, but many of us choose not to express that right. We choose not to necessarily, let's say, go out and express political speech, but we still have the right to do so. A lot of people live in those states, and they choose not to bear arms, which is really sad and very unfortunate. As a great example would be Pittsburgh. Pennsylvania is a free state, and all those people in there had the right to get carry permits, and they chose not to, and unfortunately they were victims. So, if you're going to make the same mistake in the state you're going to go to, you're not going to have a firearm, whereas where you're coming from is where you're by law not allowed to, it's not going to give you any sort of an advantage. But then again, even if people are armed, obviously without training, you're not necessarily going to be effective. You need to be trained. And even people who are trained, if there's the element of surprise and you're outgunned, there's no guarantee that you're going to be able to win. There's a lot of factors, there's a lot of variables in every situation. But at least you'll have a fighting chance. If you have a firearm, there's other people in there that have a firearm, and you're trained, and they're coming in with AR-15s, and you have your Glock, you've got a good shot to be able to neutralize them. You've got at least a fighting chance. But where they were, they had no fighting chance. They were totally vulnerable. They were sitting ducks, just like the Jews were in Germany and in Poland during the Holocaust. And that is absolutely unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. And that's why Jews need to be in places where they're not going to be sitting ducks, and they have to have the training, the kind of training that we provide them. And the combination of that training and having a firearm on you at all times hopefully will mitigate these things and at least create a situation where the enemy knows that we're strong, we're protected, we're prepared, and that in and of itself will serve as a deterrent, because these guys carried out their attack. They weren't afraid. They knew that these Jews were unarmed, because the Jews, they obey the law. These guys, these criminals, these violent, haters, these terrorists, they couldn't care less about the law. So they're breaking one law, they'll break another. And those laws empower the enemy to kill Jews. Those criminal laws, I should say. Unconstitutional and criminal laws. So to answer your question, there's no guarantee of any outcomes, but one must do our due diligence to shift the balance of power in our direction.
I understand. Okay. So my next question is this. Do you see any change coming? And this is a two-part question. Number one, in the Jewish community, do you think people are waking up? Because there was already Pittsburgh. That should have been enough. Then Poway happened. That should have been enough. And now this was allowed to happen. I'm not putting anybody at fault. Obviously, there's a certain feeling of safety in America in general. People just feel safe. You don't see these things all the time. But unfortunately, terrible people got to commit a terrible crime. And we are feeling the aftermath of that. So do you think Jews are going to wake up and start taking their safety seriously? And the second part of this question is, do you think the government will change anything in these states to allow Jews to defend themselves? Like I know in New Jersey, it's almost impossible to get a carry permit unless you have a very specific reason why your life is in danger. It might be that at this point in time, saying I'm openly Jewish means that I'm in specific danger.
Right. So I'm going to answer your second question first.
Okay.
So in terms of do I think that the government's going to change anything in terms of the gun laws? So first of all, in America, we're in a federal system. We have federal law and we have state law. So on a federal level, I believe we might have some serious positive improvement because we have Trump, who is such a wonderful friend of the Jewish people and is doing everything he can to protect us. Mm-hmm. And also the Supreme Court now, with its new Republican majority, is going to be in favor of the Jews and in favor of loosening gun regulation and making it easier for us to be able to protect ourselves. But then on the local level, on the state level, these radical left-wing states and cities such as New Jersey and New York City, they're only going to go crazier and crazier. Mark my words, they're going to blame guns and gun rights for these terror attacks. They're going to say, had we had more gun restrictions and less guns on the street, this wouldn't have happened. They use these sick propaganda to try to ban guns. So they're going to, of course, do this, just like New York State did with Cuomo after the horrible shooting in Sandy Hook, Connecticut, which wasn't even New York. He used that as an excuse to ban a whole variety of popular semi-automatic rifles in New York State. The SAFE Act, the Unsafe Act, we should call it. But they're definitely going to try to use this to further restrict gun rights, because the gun rights in places like New Jersey and New York City are only going from bad to worse. So, no, they're not going to do anything to loosen the gun laws to make it easier for Jews. They're going to do the opposite. They're going to try to take more and more guns off the streets, meaning disarming the law-abiding citizens. And that's only going to further embolden and empower the criminals and the terrorists who couldn't care less for the laws anyway, and are going to obtain guns one way or the other, legally or otherwise. So that's not going to change. The only hope lies in the federal government, with Trump, with the Republican majority, and with the Supreme Court, which might forcibly overrule a lot of these draconian laws in those types of places and enact, let's say, national reciprocity, which is something that's been discussed for a long time, meaning if you have a permit in one state, you can carry anywhere.
So what's happening with that? Why is that? I've heard about that. Why is that not gone for a vote yet?
It lost traction at a certain point. It was voted on in Congress, I believe, but then it didn't make it to the Senate. It was talked about early in Trump's presidency, but then people kind of just forgot about it. I'm not sure why. I'm sure there's reasons for it, but I hope that would be something which could really save a lot of Jewish lives. Because if there was national reciprocity, then somebody could have a permit in any state. Let's say you get a carry permit from Pennsylvania, which is not hard at all to obtain. And
even if you're an out-of-state resident?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what the intricacies of the law were.
I know Virginia gives to out-of-state people.
So, I'm a resident of one state, and I have permits from several other states, and then you have reciprocity on top of that. So, but that's the current system. But the way that they were discussing doing it in this national reciprocity law, which now has stalled, was if you have a permit from anywhere, like a driver's license. So if you have a driver's license from Pennsylvania, you can drive into New York City. So the same thing, if you had a carry permit, you could drive into New York City with it. So that would have saved a lot of Jewish lives, because that would mean that people could carry their handguns with them wherever they go. So that is maybe a ray of hope if the federal government can force that through somehow, or the Supreme Court can enact that, or if the Supreme Court can overturn the local regulations against guns in some of these places like New Jersey and New York City. But we have yet to see what's going to happen in regards to that. Now, back to your first question, in reference to have Jews woken up since these latest attacks? And the answer is yes and no. A lot of people have. As I mentioned, after Pittsburgh, many people woke up and say, hey, we need to get guns, we need to start carrying, who never thought about that before because they were so comfortable. So there has been an awakening, and then after Poway, even more people. And then in the past day, I've been inundated with a whole bunch of requests for training from even more people, specifically from the New York and New Jersey area, because it hit close to home. And they realize that this is urgent. But unfortunately, there's still so many Jews who still at this point are trying to resist the idea that we need guns for self-defense. And that is really unfortunate that they're being so stubborn, because at the end of the day, they're going to have to come around to it one way or the other, because it's either fight or perish. And they want to still live in the fantasy that we live in the 1950s, where we don't have to lock our doors at night, and everybody, loves everybody else, and it's a totally peaceful world. And that's just not the reality anymore, especially for Jews. This is a very dangerous time that we live in, and they're going to have to wake up. They're going to have to accept the reality that we're going to have to get on the train, one way or the other. And those who won't accept that reality, who are stubborn, unfortunately, are going to perish. So I hope that they wake up sooner rather than later. But we have yet to see where things go.
See, I actually did a poll on my Twitter today, and I asked Jews if they feel safe in America right now. I was surprised. 56% said yes. And, I mean, I guess maybe they're not all in New York City, but things in...
I would assume that most Jews in the New York area right now would probably be feeling rather unsafe. I mean, that's my assumption.
And right, and then I asked another question here. In the aftermath of the Jersey City shooting, which specifically targeted Jews, should Jews be arming themselves with guns? 73% said yes, 13% said no, and 14% were unsure. So I think that's like a growing trend. People are getting comfortable with the idea that it's time for them to defend themselves with guns.
So I see a lot of hope in that. It shows that people are moving in the right direction, because I bet you if you did that poll 3 years ago, the results would have been very different, probably totally inverse. That 73% would probably be anti-gun, against Jews getting guns for self-defense. Mm-hmm. So we're certainly seeing, as a result of these things that you're describing, we're certainly seeing a move in the right direction. There's improvement, but it's just so sad that it takes incidents like these to wake people up. It didn't have to be that way. They could have just seen the writing on the wall beforehand and gotten armed and gotten trained then, instead of scrambling for guns now, in a panic, out of fear for their lives. So that is unfortunate, but that is human nature very often, where people just won't take steps until the bucket of cold water hits them in the face.
Right. And regarding your training, you were a sharpshooter, right?
I was a marksman. It's called a kalai in Hebrew, a marksman, sharpshooter. That's, I suppose, the proper translation into English. In the U.S. military, the equivalent would be designated marksman.
Right. So how many years of experience do you have with firearms?
Well, between my service in the military and volunteering in the police and all the years that I've been training people, upwards of, I would say, close to 20 years, 18 to 20 years.
It's a long time.
Yeah,
So
it is a long time.
Do you have any tips for safe and responsible firearm ownership? Specifically for the Jewish community, there are a lot of children. A lot of families have children, and people are uncomfortable with the idea of having guns around the family. But people are starting to open up to it. So what do you think one should do to stay safe with children with firearms?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm a parent myself.
Right.
I have 3 young kids at home, and so this is something that's very important for me specifically. And I have a lot of firearms, and I carry a firearm, so I've obviously had to address this issue. And the answer is very simple. Whenever you're home with your kids, your firearms need to stay unloaded and locked in the safe, unless you have your personal pistol should be on you at all times until when you get home. You should unload it and put it in a safe and lock it. And don't let your kids have access to firearms unless, whenever the age comes when you want to teach your kids how to shoot, safely at the range. But up till that point, kids should be kept away from firearms. Don't leave firearms hanging around. Don't keep your weapon loaded if it's not on you. And just be very, very safe. Teach the kids from an early age proper gun safety handling. The NRA has the Eddie Eagle program where they teach children what to do if you find a firearm. Don't touch it. Tell an adult. And it's very important to make sure to insist on proper firearm safety rules, because that's how we all stay safe. That's what avoids unfortunate incidents that have happened many times in America, where kids find a gun, they get their hands on a gun, and they pull the trigger, and God forbid a disaster happens. Another thing, a very important thing that people can do to avoid any kind of negligent discharges, which is the term we use for accidental shootings, is to make sure when you're carrying a firearm, carry your handgun, never to have a round in the chamber, meaning a bullet in the barrel, right, which is the weapon is ready to fire. So always have the weapon with a loaded magazine, but an empty chamber. So you actually have to cock the weapon. You have to chamber around. You have to do an action to make it ready to fire. And it's very likely that a small child will not have the strength in their hand to rack back the slide, meaning, pull back the mechanism of the handgun to be able to do that. But it's natural for them to pull on a trigger. And if the weapon is ready to fire, they pull on the trigger and the bullet comes out and they fire. And that's how the majority of accidental shootings happen, by a child getting their hands on their mother's gun from her purse, or get their father's handgun that he just put on the nightstand or something, and they just pull the trigger, and then an accident happens. So it's very important to always carry your weapon with an empty chamber.
Right. And in a nutshell, can you tell us about the 4 basic rules of firearm safety?
Sure. So there's the NRA has established several rules of firearm safety. So it's basically always treat every weapon as if it's loaded. That's really essential. Even if you know that your weapon is not loaded, you always treat it with the same respect that you would a loaded firearm. Unfortunately, all too many people don't do that, and that's what causes negligent shootings.
Right.
Keep your weapon always pointed in a safe direction, and that is usually down at the ground or up at the sky. Could be in certain circumstances, but usually it's just kept pointed down, certainly not pointing it at any person. Never point a firearm at anyone or anything you don't intend to shoot or don't intend to destroy. That could be a person or animal. Only point a weapon if you intend to destroy the object. And know your target and what's behind it. If you're going to shoot, don't just shoot randomly into the woods, not knowing if there's a house behind there, because bullets do travel very far, and making sure that doesn't, you don't accidentally kill people. There's other firearm safety rules as well that we all have to adhere to. Always wear eye and ear protection. Don't shoot at hard objects, which bullets can ricochet off of. What we call trigger discipline, keeping your finger off the trigger at all times until you're ready to fire. Yeah. There's a variety of firearm safety rules. It's not just the 4 that are given by the NRA. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's essential to be safe with your firearm. And another thing I have to say, get trained before you buy a firearm. Don't just go to the store and buy a gun and then figure you're going to learn firearm safety afterwards. First get trained. And only once you know how to use the weapon, then go to the store and buy the weapon. By that time, you'll probably have a pretty good idea of what kind of a weapon works for you as well.
Right. And what kind of weapons do you recommend for first-time buyers?
So, first of all, it depends on if you're looking for a long gun, meaning a rifle or a shotgun, or a handgun. Most people, for defense, buy handguns. I tell people you really can't go wrong with a Glock. The Glock pistols, the Glock 17 or the Glock 19, they're just very, very simple.
What do you carry?
Accurate. They're what?
What do you carry?
I carry a Glock 19.
Okay.
So that's the standard pistol of the Israel Defense Forces and the Israeli police, and also many, many militaries and police departments across the world, security services use them. And they're very, very rugged. They almost never jam. You don't have to clean them as much as you do other weapons. And again, just very simple mechanism. There's not a lot that goes into it. So those are great. But again, every person has something that fits them. Some people have larger hands. Some people have smaller hands. Some people prefer revolvers over semi-automatic pistols. There's really there's a variety of things out there. And just know what's right for you. And then in terms of long guns, a lot of people have long guns as well. AR-15 is probably the number one go-to rifle on the market today, just, again, for the same reason as the Glock. It's just very simple to use. It's got almost no recoil. It's very reliable, very accurate, high capacity, light, ease of use. And that's why militaries and police departments all around the world use them, and that's why a lot of American civilians like AR-15s, and I love them. So those are probably your two standard firearms, your AR-15 or your M4, which is pretty common today, and the Glock 19. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's what's right for everybody. Some people like Uzis. Some people like tactical shotguns. Some people like AKs or Galils. There's a lot out there on the market.
Right. When we did the training course, you did a lot of talking about shotguns, and you mentioned that that's a very good gun for home defense.
Absolutely, yeah. Shotguns are great for home defense because they you don't really need to aim them the way you would a rifle because they shoot multiple projectiles as opposed to one projectile. So if it's the middle of the night and you're kind of confused, you just woke up from your sleep and you don't see very well, it's dark. You fire a shotgun, it fires off buckshot, which is the defensive ammo that you'd use, fires off multiple pellets, and it spreads. So you'd be able to hit a target much easier than you would with a rifle. And also, it's got a lot of it's got a lot of power, so you can stop an attacker easier than with a smaller caliber weapon. And they're also very simple to use. Pump-action shotguns. They're very, very reliable, and they're not expensive. So shotguns are very good for home defense. Also, they don't over-penetrate walls. A lot of walls in America are made of sheetrock, drywall, and an AR-15 round, a 5.56 bullet would penetrate quite a few layers of that, whereas buckshot will not penetrate as much. I'm not saying it's not going to penetrate at all, but it will not penetrate to the same degree, which basically is a safety advantage because you're not necessarily going to endanger the whole neighborhood by firing indoors. You're not necessarily going to accidentally kill the old lady 3 doors down by shooting through drywall with a shotgun, whereas with a lot of rifles you might. So that's an advantage. But again, there's a lot of options out there.
Wow. And on the business side of things, just a couple of quick questions. Number one, when you're running these courses, where do they take place? How long do they take? Give us a little bit more information about that.
Right. So We have our facility in Northeast Pennsylvania in Honesdale, where we run our courses for the Northeast, and they're full-day courses from approximately 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Some of them take even longer than that. I believe when you came, it was even a longer course than that. And about half the day is in the classroom, learning theory and dry fire, and then after a lunch break, we do the live fire out on the range. And then we also, in the wintertime, run courses in Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, out in the desert. And then also recently in Tampa, Florida. So we cover 3 major areas of the country. So we've got the Northeast, we've got the Southeast, and also the Southwest. So in Arizona, we get a lot of people coming from LA, San Diego, Las Vegas. And then in Tampa, a lot of people from Miami and Atlanta.
Right.
So we're able to basically offer this training to people in a large percentage of the country. Maybe not everywhere. We're not in the Pacific Northwest. We're not in the Midwest. We're not in Alaska. But we try to cover as much territory as we can.
Yeah, and I love the fact that what you're doing is something that's, obviously that's what your job is. That's what you do for,
Right.
to make a living. But you're also doing something with a mission and a purpose, and you're trying to help the world become a better place.
Absolutely. It gives me a lot of satisfaction to know that my career is not just a way of earning a living. It's also making people safe. And, it gives me a lot of meaning in life and puts a smile on my face and makes me very enthusiastic about the work I do because I know that it's saving people's lives. And whenever I have clients who call me and they thank me for the training that I gave them when they came to a course, 3 or 4 years ago, and they've been carrying their concealed firearms to synagogue and securing their community against threats, and just knowing that I'm responsible for that, for making those communities secure, it gives me a tremendous amount of satisfaction.
Right, and also on the business side of things, what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's going into business, somebody who's starting something, or somebody who's already in business? Tip for success?
You got to do something you love. I love guns. What can I tell you? It's something that I've been into since I'm a teenager, and it's something that I'm good at. And if I was doing something that I didn't enjoy and something that I wasn't naturally good at, I don't think I'd be successful. If I tried to be an accountant, I would be a terrible accountant. If I tried to be a doctor, I'd be a terrible doctor. But I love firearms, and I love training people. And that's what makes me a great instructor. People are very satisfied because they see that my heart's into it. And I think it's the same in any profession. If your heart is into it, if you love what you do, you're going to be successful. If you hate your job, find another one.
That's a great tip.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else I should be asking you? Anything I missed? You're the one asking the questions, but I just hope that all the people that are out there listening realize that we really do live in some very dangerous times, and even if it hasn't hit your community yet, there's no telling how much longer till the day when it does. And I'm not trying to fearmonger here. I'm just trying to be realistic, and I want everyone to think about that and think about their personal safety and realize that it is really important to be armed and to be prepared, even if you aren't necessarily facing a clear and present danger this minute. The motto I use is it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. That's a great, great motto.
I agree.
Okay. 2 more questions, if it's okay.
Sure.
Number 1, I just would like to do something funky at the end of the episode. If you could have a coffee, beer, cigar with anybody in the world, anybody throughout history, alive or dead, who would it be?
Wow, that is a great question. Well, the first person who comes to mind is the gun guru Jeff Cooper, who passed away about 15 or 20 years ago, and I'm a big fan of his writings.
Never heard of him.
Well, you should look into him. He was a popular writer. He wrote for Guns and Ammo, I believe, and some other publications. Wrote a whole bunch of books on the topics of shooting, and fascinating stuff. I don't necessarily agree with everything he wrote, but he would be someone that I would love to sit down for coffee with. And I can also think of Rabbi Meir Kahana, He is somebody that I have a lot of respect for, and I think that he was very, very instrumental in getting Jews to protect themselves in America when there was waves of anti-Semitism in the 1960s and 70s, and fighting for Soviet Jewry. So I would love to sit down and have a beer or coffee with him.
Okay. And for the last question, where can people find you? How do people get in touch with you? Is there a website, email, phone number, address?
Sure. So the easiest way to do it is to go to our website, which is www.cherevgidon.com. And for those of you who are not familiar with Hebrew pronunciations and have trouble pronouncing the guttural ch, that is CHEREVGIDON.com. So cherevgidon.com, and we've got all of our info on the website. There's info about courses, info about what we do, the different options and the different locations. And if you have any questions, you can shoot us an email through there, and we'll be happy to answer you.
Okay, and I know it's very late at night where you are right now. You have a course tomorrow morning at 7:30, you said?
I do, first thing in the morning. At this time of year, we have to start early because it gets dark so early.
Right.
So we have to squeeze out every bit of daylight, because by the time the sun goes down, because we're shooting outdoors, and once the sun goes down, it's pitch black. We can't shoot anymore. So I mean, there's night shooting courses, which is a different subject altogether. But for the average person, that's not really what we do for the most part. So when the sun goes down, it's over. So we gotta start really nice and early.
Right. Okay. So good luck with that. Get some sleep.
Thank you.
And I just want to bless you for, I want to thank you, number one, for what you're doing for the community and for the world. You are trying to make the world a safer and better place. So God bless you for that. And I also hope that people will take you up on your training. I remember you once told me, it doesn't even matter who people go to. I don't care if they come to me. Of course, you'd love if they came to you. But just the main thing is get armed, get trained. And so I hope people do that. But I also hope we should never need your services, not yours. We should never need anybody to have to stop any of these terrible tragedies from happening. We hope the world will become a better, finer, safer, and kinder place.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I carry my weapon with me every day, everywhere I go, and thank God up till now I haven't had to use it, and I hope for the rest of my life it stays that way, where I won't need to ever draw my weapon in anger.
Amen.
And I hope the same thing for everyone else. But again, I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. And honestly, it was an honor having you out at the facility and training you and having you meet one of my instructors and meeting the clients. And I hope to see you again there sometime.
Yeah, I hope to be back. It was a lot of fun. And I guess we'll do it again when I'm back in the States.
Absolutely. Well, it's great talking to you, and I'm so happy to be on the show.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And God bless you. Have a good night.
Same to you. Take care.
I hope you all enjoyed that interview. And if you need any more information, you can check out Yonatan and his website in the link below. And now I want to tell you about something that I found to be very helpful. There's a wonderful app called Acorns. Acorns helps you save money in the background. You don't even know what's happening. Basically, I work hard for my money, and I have a lot of expenses. So at the end of the month, a lot of money is going straight out the door. Rent, food, transportation, all sorts of stuff. But there's a way that you can save money, and it's not hard. Through Acorns, this is an app that you merge with your bank accounts. You can merge it with your credit cards. And what it does is you can set up a recurring fee. So let's say every week you want to save $25. Acorns will automatically go into your bank account, take out that $25, and invest it in a savings account for you. Additionally, they can do roundups on your credit card. So let's say you buy something, you go to Starbucks, you buy a coffee for $4.59. The remaining 41 cents, what they will do is they'll round it up to $5. So they take 41 cents, because your coffee only costed $4.59. The remaining 41 cents goes into your savings account. So slowly, you don't really feel it because they're taking a few cents at a time, but you're building yourself a saving account. I have started using Acorns in the past few weeks, and I've already saved a couple $100. So that's wonderful. If you're like me and it's hard for you to save, Perhaps you want to try out Acorns and it can help you start saving money today. I must tell you the app costs $1 a month, but you will probably be saving a lot more, and you can slowly build yourself a savings account. Maybe you want to save up for a house, a vacation, a car, buy a gift for someone you love. Anything it is, you can save money with Acorns. So please, if you're thinking about signing up for this wonderful service, use my link also in the show notes, in the show description, and you will get a $5 bonus. I will get a bonus as well, and everybody wins. Lastly, before you go, please like this show, subscribe to the show, tell your friends about it, leave us a wonderful review. If you like the show, please leave us a 5-star review, leave us a nice comment, subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, Instagram at YouAreNotAGoat. You can also follow my personal pages on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Chusidel, that's Chusidel, and you can subscribe to my awesome YouTube channel. We have wonderful travel videos coming up all the time, so check that stuff out. I look forward to seeing you next week, hopefully with better news and a wonderful guest. Have a wonderful week. I'm out.
You are not a goat. The podcast for you.